The starship drifted silently through the endless void, its silver hull glinting faintly against the distant stars. Commander Kale stood at the observation deck, staring into the swirling purple clouds of the Zareth Nebula. It was beautiful, almost unreal, but his mind was focused on the mission. The galaxy had sent him here as a representative of humanity, not as a warrior, but as a negotiator. The task seemed simple on paper: meet Empress Liara of Lyria, ensure peace between her empire and the human colonies. In practice, Kale knew it would test everything he believed about courage, trust, and the strange, unpredictable power of the human heart. He had heard the stories. The Lyrans were a proud and ancient species, feared across dozens of star systems. Their empress was said to be untouchable, cold, and beyond anyone's understanding. Many had tried to speak with her. Most had bowed and obeyed, leaving her palace, with trembling hands and hollow eyes. Yet Kale had not come to bow. He had come to show that humans were not fragile, that they were capable of something more: resilience. The docking bay doors opened with a soft hiss. Gold light spilled across the floor, and Kale's boots echoed as he stepped onto the palace platform. The air smelled faintly of burning amber, mingling with something sweet and foreign. For a moment he was overwhelmed by the size and opulence of it all. The walls were carved from a material that shimmered like liquid metal. Floating orbs of light drifted lazily above him, illuminating statues of Lyran gods long forgotten. He felt small, but not afraid. Fear was something he refused to let rule him. Then she appeared. Empress Liara moved as if the air itself obeyed her. She was taller than any human, but her presence made her seem delicate, almost ethereal. Her hair fell like a silver waterfall, catching the light, and her eyes were a deep, endless violet. When they met Kale's, it was like looking into a galaxy all at once. Beautiful, terrifying, and impossible to ignore. He felt a strange pull in his chest, a recognition that this being, though alien and commanding, was lonely in ways he could almost understand. "You'll break me, human. Still I crave you," she whispered, almost as if the words were not meant for him. Kale froze. Her voice was soft, melodic, but underneath it was raw, trembling with something he had never heard from a ruler before. Was it longing? Was it fear? Or something even deeper, something dangerous? Liara stepped closer, and Kale noticed the smallest signs of hesitation. Her hands twitched slightly at her sides. She had seen countless humans, yet something about him made her pause. Most would have bowed, spoken words of flattery, or trembled in fear. Kyle did none of those things. He stood tall, steady, and met her gaze with a calm she could not command. "You are different," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not like the others. Not like those who come before you and leave me with only shadows." Her eyes softened, and for a moment Kyle saw a flicker of vulnerability hidden behind centuries of power. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but he felt it clearly. The Empress, the untouchable Liara, was human in her loneliness. Kyle's hands were relaxed at his sides. "I did not come to fear," he said. "I came to understand, to see you as you are." A silence fell between them. The palace, vast and ornate, seemed to shrink around the weight of their exchange. Liara tilted her head, studying him as though deciding whether he was a threat or something far more dangerous. He felt a strange mixture of fear and awe. This was no ordinary ruler. This was a being who had survived centuries of betrayal, war, and solitude. Yet here she was, her defenses trembling at the presence of one human who refused to be intimidated. "You may not understand the danger," she murmured, stepping back slightly, her hands brushing the air. "Everything about me, my empire, my power, my life, could destroy you. And yet, still, you remain." "Why?" Kale's voice was steady, warm. "Because humans are not as fragile as you think. We survive, we hope, and sometimes we reach places even the strongest walls cannot." "Hold," For the first time in centuries, Liara's lips curved into a half-smile, tinged with wonder and disbelief. She had not expected this. No one had. And yet, she was drawn to him, not by duty, not by power, but by something far more ancient, far more human: curiosity. Kyle did not bow. He did not kneel. He simply held his gaze and waited, letting the silence speak louder than words. And in that silence, the first fragile thread of connection between human and Empress was formed, an invisible spark that would grow into a storm. The inner palace of Liara was unlike anything Kale had ever imagined. The walls shimmered like liquid glass reflecting the soft glow of floating lights. Every corner seemed alive, almost breathing, as if the palace itself was aware of his presence. Gold and violet hues mingled in the air, casting strange shadows that danced silently across the floor. Despite the grandeur, there was a quiet intimacy here, something that felt almost human, and Kale realized that the Empress had designed this space not just to impress but to protect herself. Liara moved ahead of him, her steps silent, her presence commanding yet strangely gentle. "You walk into my heart as easily as you walk into my palace," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of curiosity and caution. Kyle followed without hesitation. Humans were not made for grandeur, he thought. Humans were made for connection, for courage, for understanding. And he had to show her that he was here not as an intruder, but as someone who could see beyond power and fear. They entered a room filled with mirrors that stretched from floor to ceiling. The reflections multiplied them endlessly, creating hundreds of Liara's images, and hundreds of Kale's, all merging and moving with the shifting lights. Kyle felt a flicker of disorientation, but he held his ground. The Empress, however, seemed unsettled. Her violet eyes darted from reflection to reflection, as if she were searching for something, some proof that he might falter, or fail, or betray her trust. "You are not afraid," she murmured, almost to herself. "No one comes here without fear." Her hand hovered near a floating orb of light, fingers trembling slightly, betraying a vulnerability Kale had not expected. Most would cower. Most would bow. Most would leave me alone. But you... She paused, her eyes locking onto his. "You are different." Kyle stepped closer, speaking softly. "Fear is easy. Understanding is harder. I did not come here to bow to power. I came to see the truth." Her laughter was a soft, fragile sound, like glass tinkling in the wind. "Truth?" she repeated, tilting her head. "Do you even know what that means in my world? Truth is a luxury. It is dangerous. It can kill or save. And yet, you speak it like it is nothing." Kale did not flinch. "It is not nothing. It is everything." For a long moment, Liara studied him. The mirrored room multiplied her eyes, but each reflection seemed less confident than the last. Kale realized that she was not invincible, despite what the universe said. She had survived centuries of war, betrayal, and solitude. Yet here she was, trembling under the weight of one human's calm determination. "I have watched humans for centuries," she said finally, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your kind fascinates me. Fragile, yes, but also strong. Clever. Brave. You feel things others cannot. You endure what others break from. And yet, I never touched one who could stand before me as you do." Kale felt a warmth in his chest. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy. They were called weak, emotional, unpredictable. And yet here he was, proving the truth she had been too proud or too lonely to admit. He nodded slowly. "Humans endure because we must. We thrive because we hope. And sometimes we reach even the impossible." Liara's expression softened. She was a ruler, yes, but she was also a woman who had lived too long without real connection. Her empire demanded perfection, her people demanded obedience, and the galaxy demanded fear. No one had ever dared to offer her trust, and certainly no one had dared to see her as a person. Not until Kale. You could leave, she said suddenly, turning away to look at the mirrored reflections of herself. You could go back to your people, to your colonies, to safety. And I would be left alone, as always. Yet you stay. Why? Kale's voice was steady. Because loneliness is the enemy of every being, no matter how strong. You have endured everything, Liara, but no one has truly stood with you. I will not leave. Not now. Not ever. Her hands trembled slightly, and for a moment she seemed afraid of herself. Most humans are weak. Most break under the weight of their own fears. You are not like them. But even so, what if you break? Can you survive me? Kyle smiled faintly. I will not break. Humans have a way of surviving even the impossible. And sometimes, we grow stronger because of it. Liara's eyes shone with something she had not allowed herself to feel in centuries. Longing. A dangerous, beautiful, intoxicating longing. She had ruled empires, fought wars, and defied death itself. Yet this human had reached her in ways no power or weapon ever could. And she craved it. You are fearless, she whispered. And yet, I fear you. Kale reached out, his hand just short of hers. Fear is natural, but connection is stronger. Let me show you. And for the first time in her life, Liara felt a tremor of something she had denied herself for centuries. Something she had tried to command, to control, and yet had always eluded her. Hope. The mirrors reflected their images endlessly, but now Kale and Liara seemed separate from all else, as if the universe itself had paused, waiting to see what they would do next. For the first time in her immortal life, Liara understood something dangerous, beautiful and unstoppable. Humans could awaken even the most unyielding heart. The palace was quiet, but inside Liara, a storm raged. She had tested Kale in ways no human had ever been tested before. She had thrown illusions, nightmares, and threats at him, yet he remained steadfast, unbroken, and unwavering. The realization hit her with the force of a supernova. She could not break him. And the truth terrified her. She had survived centuries by controlling everything. Empires, wars, lives. But this human had found a way to pierce her defenses without violence, without strategy, without fear. She summoned him to the deepest chamber of her palace. It was a place few had ever seen, where the walls shimmered like liquid silver and the air carried the weight of countless secrets. The room seemed to pulse with her power, almost as if it were alive, reflecting her immense strength and centuries of solitude. Kyle entered calmly, his gaze steady as he had always done. You will break me, Liara said, her voice trembling in a way she had not allowed herself to show for centuries. I am the Empress of Lyria. I command fleets, worlds, and armies. I bend galaxies to my will, and yet, you remain. You stand. You endure. Why? Kale stepped closer, his presence calm and unwavering. Because humans endure, Liara. We endure because we must. We face what others flee from, and we protect those who cannot protect themselves. You are not just an empress to me. You are you, and I will not leave you alone. Her violet eyes widened, a flicker of fear and longing passing across her face. Do you not understand? Everything about me, my empire, my power, my life, could destroy you. One misstep, one wrong move, and you would be gone. I am dangerous. You cannot survive me. I may survive or I may fall, Kyle admitted, his voice steady and gentle. But I will face it with you. That is what humans do. That is what I choose. Liara's hands trembled, and for the first time she felt truly seen. Not as a ruler, not as a goddess, not as an untouchable force of the universe, but as a being capable of love, fear, and longing. She had spent centuries hiding her heart, protecting herself from connection, from vulnerability, from the very thing she secretly craved. And now, a human had reached her in a way no one else ever could. You tempt me, she whispered, her voice breaking. I should push you away. I should protect myself. But I cannot. I cannot. Kyle reached for her hand, holding it firmly yet gently. Then we face it together, he said. No illusions, no tests, no walls, just truth, just us. Her breath caught in her throat. The immense weight of centuries pressed down on her, yet she felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest, a fragile fire that had been buried under power, duty, and fear. She realized the dangerous truth. She wanted him, not as a tool, not as a pawn, not as a curiosity, but as someone who could touch her soul, someone who could see her fully and remain unafraid. Liara's knees weakened, and she sank to the floor, unable to hide her vulnerability. Kale knelt beside her, his hand steadying hers, his gaze filled with understanding. She had ruled countless worlds, faced armies, outlived generations, yet she trembled now before the quiet strength of a human who refused to break. You could leave, she whispered, tears glistening in her violet eyes. You could escape, you could walk away from this, and I would remain alone, I would always remain alone. I do not leave, Kale said softly. Not now, not ever. Humans endure. We do not abandon those who need us, those who trust us, those who allow us into their hearts. You allowed me, and I will stay. For a long, suspended moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Liara felt the crushing weight of her own emotions, the fear, the longing, the vulnerability she had hidden for centuries. Yet she also felt something else, hope. A hope she had never allowed herself. A hope that perhaps, for the first time, she could be seen, understood, and loved for who she truly was. I am yours, she whispered, voice trembling, almost afraid to hear the answer. Even if it destroys me? Kyle nodded, a gentle smile on his face. Even if it changes everything, even if it risks everything, because some truths are worth facing, and some hearts are worth holding. Tears ran down her cheeks, hot and shimmering like molten gold. The immortal, untouchable Empress of Lyria had finally found something she had long denied herself, someone who could meet her strength with courage, her power with compassion, and her heart with unwavering resilience. And in that quiet, fragile moment, Liara understood a truth that no empire or weapon could teach. Even the most unyielding heart could be awakened by humanity, by courage, by love. For the first time in centuries, she let herself fall, not into despair, not into fear, but into the tender, terrifying embrace of hope. The night was quiet in the palace, but Liara could feel the tremor of her own heart. She had tested Kale in ways that no human, or any being, had ever faced. She had confronted him with illusions, threats, and nightmares designed to break him. And still, he had remained steadfast, unbroken, and unwavering. Yet it was not his survival that impressed her most, it was his humanity. Every action, every word, every moment revealed a strength she had never seen in her long life. A quiet, unshakable courage born of hope, compassion, and determination. Kyle sat across from her on the balcony, staring at the swirling nebula that stretched across the sky like a living painting. Liara watched him, mesmerized by the way he carried himself. There was no arrogance, no fear, no hesitation, only the calm assurance that humans had survived, endured, and thrived in circumstances far worse than any she could imagine. She had studied humans for centuries, yet she realized now that she had never truly understood them. Not until Kale. You are fearless, she whispered, almost afraid her words would vanish into the night. And yet, there is more than fearlessness. You endure. You carry yourself with a strength I cannot teach, cannot command, cannot force. Kale looked at her and smiled softly. Humans endure because we must. We survive because we hope. And we fight because we care. Sometimes we choose to face the impossible because it is worth it. And you, Liara, are worth it. Her chest tightened. She had ruled empires, outlived generations, and faced annihilation countless times. Yet no enemy, no battle, No weapon had ever reached her heart like this human. He did not bow. He did not beg, and he did not submit to her power. He simply saw her. Fully. Without fear. Without judgment. Without reservation. Liara reached out, her hand trembling as it hovered over his. "You could leave," she said softly, almost as if asking herself. "You could turn away. One wrong step, and everything could collapse. And yet, you stay. Why?" Kyle took her hand gently, his touch steady and warm. "Because we endure, Liara. Humans endure, and we do not abandon those who allow us to see them. You have allowed me to see you, not the Empress, not the power, but the person. And I will not leave you alone, not now, not ever." Tears welled in her violet eyes, shimmering like molten gold against her pale skin. She had spent centuries hiding from connection, protecting herself from emotion, from desire, from vulnerability. And yet here he was, a human who had walked straight into her heart, without fear, without hesitation, without breaking. She realized something terrifying and beautiful. She wanted him not as a curiosity, not as a pawn, not as a fleeting distraction, but as someone who could truly reach her soul. "You are reckless," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You could be destroyed by me. You could be shattered by what I am." Kale smiled faintly, holding her gaze. "I may face danger, yes. I may fall. But I will not live in fear. Humans survive because we face what must be faced. And sometimes, we grow stronger because of it. I am stronger now because I chose to stand with you." Liara's chest heaved. She had known power, command, fear, and control. She had commanded armies, bent worlds, and survived betrayal after betrayal. But no experience, no victory, no conquest had ever felt as profound as this. A human, fragile in form yet unyielding in spirit, standing beside her, refusing to break, refusing to run, refusing to leave. "You are human," she whispered, almost disbelieving. "And yet you have shown me something no empire, no weapon, no centuries of rule ever could. Hope, and connection, and love." Kyle drew her closer, his hand brushing her cheek. "Humans endure, because we see worth where others see only fear. We hold on to what matters. And you matter. You are not alone anymore, Liara. Not as long as I stand with you." For a long moment, the galaxy seemed to pause. Stars swirled silently in the nebula, casting a soft glow over them. The Empress, immortal and untouchable, trembled before the human strength that was not in his muscles or weapons, but in his heart. The power of humanity, the ability to endure, to hope, to love even in the face of overwhelming odds, had reached her where nothing else could. Liara leaned into him, letting her head rest against his chest. She had been the most powerful being in the galaxy, feared by many, worshipped by some, and yet here she was, unafraid, unshielded, and utterly vulnerable. And Kale, with steady hands and unwavering courage, held her as if her power did not intimidate him, as if her fear did not frighten him, as if her heart, unguarded and exposed, were a treasure to protect. "You are human," she murmured, "and yet, you have given me everything I have longed for." The palace was quiet after the meeting in the mirrored chamber, but Liara could not sleep. She moved through the halls alone, her hands brushing against the smooth walls, her mind tangled in thoughts she had long buried. For centuries, she had watched humans from afar, fascinated by their fragility and resilience. She had studied them, experimented with illusions, read their histories, and observed their colonies. But it was always from a distance. None had ever touched her heart. None had ever stood before her without fear. None until Kale. She paused at the balcony overlooking the violet nebula. The stars swirled in patterns that made her feel both small and immense, and she thought of him, of the human who did not kneel, who did not beg, who did not falter. He had come as a representative of his kind, yet he had arrived as an anomaly, someone who could see her not as an empress, not as a goddess, but as a woman. That thought both terrified and exhilarated her. She had spent centuries controlling everything, her empire, her people, her image, even her emotions. Yet here was someone she could not control, someone who made her feel raw and exposed. Meanwhile, Kale was not idle. He wandered the gardens of the palace, touching the strange bioluminescent flowers that seemed to hum beneath his fingers. Did not understand all of her culture, her history, or her power, but he understood one thing clearly. She was lonely. She had everything, thrones, armies, wealth, but she had no one who could truly see her. And humans, he knew, had a strange way of breaking through walls, not with force, but with patience, understanding, and the courage to stand unbroken. Days passed, and their meetings became longer, more personal, Liara began to ask him questions, not about treaties or wars or politics, but about simple things, human habits, dreams, fears. She listened intently, absorbing every word, fascinated by the way he expressed hope and resilience even in the darkest circumstances. In return, Kale asked about her, probing gently, never demanding, never judging. Slowly, she began to reveal herself piece by piece, allowing him to see cracks she had hidden from everyone else. "You are unlike any human I have seen," she admitted one evening, sitting on a balcony that overlooked the endless expanse of stars. "You do not fear me. You do not tremble before my power. You stand." Her voice was soft, tinged with wonder and disbelief. "Why do you stay when the galaxy itself would warn you to flee?" Kyle smiled faintly. "Because strength without connection is empty. Humans endure because we must. But we survive and thrive because we reach for one another. You are not alone, Liara. Not when I am here." She felt her heart flutter in a way she had not felt in centuries. It was both thrilling and terrifying. She had ruled entire galaxies, survived wars that annihilated civilizations, and yet this one human had found a way to pierce her carefully constructed armor. She had been an empress of power, feared by many, admired by some, but she had never been seen, not truly, not until Kale. "You tempt me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I should push you away, I should guard myself, I am dangerous, you could be destroyed by me." Kyle reached for her hand, holding it gently. "I am not afraid of danger. Humans are fragile, yes, but we are also resilient, and sometimes we choose to face the impossible because it matters, because it is worth it. And you are worth it." Liara's eyes filled with a mixture of awe and longing. She had tried to resist emotions like this, labeling them as weaknesses, but she realized now that they were not weaknesses, they were life. Connection was life. And for the first time, she allowed herself to crave something that was forbidden, something she had denied herself for centuries: companionship, understanding, and perhaps love. The nights that followed were spent in conversation and quiet observation. Kale did not judge her, did not demand, and did not falter. Liara, in turn, shared stories of her past, of victories and losses, of betrayals and triumphs, of loneliness that stretched over centuries. Every story was a piece of her soul, and Kale listened as though it were the most precious tale in the universe. In that silence between words, a bond was forming. Liara's obsession with humans, long hidden, long restrained, shifted into something tangible, something real. She craved his presence, his words, his courage, and Kyle, steady and unwavering, had become her anchor, the first human to reach her heart without breaking under her shadow. By the time the stars had shifted across the nebula, Liara realized, a truth she had tried to deny: Kale was no ordinary human. He was a force, a light in the darkness of her eternal life, someone who could see her fully, unafraid. And she wanted him, not as a ruler, not as a goddess, but as a person. "You are dangerous," she whispered one night, leaning close to him, "and yet, I cannot stop craving you." Kale's hand closed over hers. "Then we face it together." And in that fragile, daring statement, the first spark of something extraordinary ignited between human and Empress, a spark that neither time nor empire could extinguish. Liara's fascination with Kale soon shifted into something more dangerous. She began to test him, not with words but with trials designed to measure his courage, resilience, and heart. The palace itself became a labyrinth of illusions, each room a test of mind and spirit. One chamber would immerse him in visions of his deepest fears, another would threaten him with creatures born from nightmares. The air would tremble, lights flickering with unseen power, while the walls seemed alive, closing in, as if the palace itself were judging him. Kyle faced every trial with unwavering calm. He did not falter, did not scream, did not betray panic. Every fear, every illusion, he met with the same steady gaze and quiet courage that had drawn Liara to him in the first place. Yet she watched from the shadows, her emotions a storm she barely controlled. She had intended these trials to be a barrier, to see if he would break, to confirm the fragility of humans. But he did not break. Not once. "You should have fallen by now," she said one night, her voice echoing in the Hall of Illusions. She stepped out of the shadows, her eyes reflecting both fear and longing. "I have pushed others to the edge. They crumble, they flee. And yet, you remain." "Why?" Kale looked at her, his expression calm. "Because I do not face you alone. I do not fear you, Liara, because I see the truth behind the power. You are not just an empress, not just a force of the galaxy. You are lonely. And loneliness is stronger than fear, stronger than illusions, stronger than nightmares. That is why I stand." Liara's hands trembled, a rare crack in her armor. She had ruled galaxies, commanded armies, and survived centuries of betrayal. And yet here she was, undone by a human who refused to kneel, who refused to bow, who refused to be intimidated. Every trial she sent at him, every illusion she conjured, had been meant to assert control, but control was slipping through her fingers like starlight. The palace trembled one evening as she tested him with the most dangerous challenge yet, a vision of total annihilation, where the human colonies Kale had sworn to protect were consumed by fire and chaos. Terrified screams echoed through the hall, flames licked the walls, and Kale's mind saw horrors he had never imagined. Many humans would have run, would have collapsed under the weight of despair. But Kale did not falter. He closed his eyes, breathing steadily, and faced the vision head-on. "I cannot control this," he whispered, "but I can endure it. I can survive it. And I will fight to protect what I love." Liara watched, heart pounding, as he confronted the impossible and refused to break. Her obsession with humans, her fascination with their strength and resilience became almost unbearable. She wanted him to falter not out of malice, but because she feared what it meant for her own heart. "You are reckless," she said softly, moving closer to him. "You could die. You could be destroyed by me." "I may die," Kyle admitted, calmly. "But I will not live in fear, and I will not leave you alone. Humans endure, Liara, and we do not walk away from those who need us or who need to be seen." Liara's chest tightened. She realized something terrifying and thrilling. She could not control him, and she did not want to. She wanted him to stay. She wanted him to defy her. Every illusion, every trial, every test of fear had not weakened him. It had only drawn him closer into the web of her heart, a place she had tried to hide from the galaxy and even from herself. The air in the chamber shimmered, and for a long moment neither spoke. Liara's immense power, which had shattered planets and bent fleets to her will, felt powerless against a simple human truth: resilience, hope, and unwavering courage. Kyle's human strength was not measured in muscle or weapons, but in the refusal to break and the ability to endure the impossible, in the quiet fire of the heart. Finally, Liara whispered almost to herself, "You could leave. You could turn away, but you stay. Why?" Kale stepped closer, reaching for her hand. "Because you are not alone anymore. And because I see you, Liara, not as an empress, not as a goddess, but as someone who deserves to be seen." That is worth everything. Her eyes glistened with tears she had not allowed herself for centuries. Here, in the echoing halls of her palace, she faced a truth she could not deny. Kale was different. He had endured everything she had thrown at him, not because he was invincible, but because he was human. And that humanity, fragile, stubborn, relentless, had begun to reach her in ways no power or empire ever could.